Hello everyone. In this video we are going to discuss about a living world and we are going to give much focus on characteristics of a living things. Basically the components of the earth is classified into two types, biotic component and abiotic component. All living things are included in biotic component and non-living things are included in abiotic. When we look at our surroundings, there is a mixture of living things and non-living things. Let's focus on living things. How do living things are different from non-living things? What are the basic characteristics? There are 5 basic characteristics of living things: growth, reproduction, metabolism, cellular organization, sense or consciousness. Growth. Let's talk about it in detail. What is growth? What are the characteristics of growth? Number 1, increase in body mass as well as increase in number of living things. Both of them are the characteristics of growth and they are called as twin characteristics of growth. Again, we have more division in the growth based on the two criteria. The first criteria talks about duration. Based on the duration, growth is divided into two types: limited growth and unlimited growth. Let's talk about unlimited growth. It always happens in the plants. The growth is always happens due to the cell division and it happens continuously in their whole lifespan. When we talk about limited growth, it happens in animals. This growth is seen only up to certain age with the help of the cell division. The second criteria based on the source. We have two types of growth: intrinsic growth and extrinsic growth. Increasing in the number of the cells, as a result increasing in the body weight and all, it happens due to the cell metabolism. Even though height shows outside, but actually the cell is the one, it's increasing the number of the cell is the one helpful for that, increasing the height. So this is included in that intrinsic growth and this is the unique property of the living things. Extrinsic growth means the definition of extrinsic growth, it is also increasing in the mass of body but due to the surface accumulation. I can give you one example. We can include that non-living things also here. For example, if you pour the garbage like 2 to 3 days, it started to increase in size because of the accumulation of more space, right? So it also takes place in non-living things. So that's what in the beginning itself I told you. So this is not that the unique or a special feature of the living things. Let's move on to the reproduction. Reproduction. What is reproduction? All the living organisms can produce offsprings of its own kind. That is called as reproduction. There are two types of reproduction: sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Let's talk about in the beginning asexual reproduction. What is asexual production? Only one parent is enough here. There is no involvement of fusion of the gametes and the offsprings or young ones are identical to the parents. Let's talk about sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, there is an involvement of two living organisms and there is a fusion of the gametes and there is a changes in the number of the chromosomes and the offsprings also genetically different from the parents. Now let's talk about the type of the asexual reproduction. There are different types in the asexual reproduction: binary fission, budding, spore formation, fragmentation, regeneration, vegetative reproduction. These are all the examples of the asexual reproduction. Amoeba is a very good example of binary fission and yeast is an example of budding. Fungi is an example of a spore formation. Planaria, you could observe that the fragmentation, even regeneration also you could observe in a planaria. Vegetative reproduction happens in the plants like potato, onion, ginger, etc. Let's talk about the reproduction in the unicellular organisms. In unicellular organisms, growth as well as reproduction happens simultaneously. I already told you growth means increasing in the number of the cells. Reproduction means increasing in the number of living organisms. So both of the things happen simultaneously in the unicellular organisms. And one more thing we are going to discuss about it. Before we are discussing about it, I'm going to tell you one word: sterile. Sterile means incapable of reproduction. Already we have discussed all the living organisms have the ability to reproduce. There is an exception. Some of the living organisms, they cannot reproduce. The organisms, they are incapable of a reproduction. They are called as sterile. The mule, it is included in the living organisms, but they are incapable of reproducing. And even the worker honeybees also are included in sterile category. They are also incapable of doing the reproduction. So, but we cannot just pull them out of the living things characteristics. Living things, they are included in the living things only, but they are not included in that the reproduction characteristics. Now let's move on to that metabolism. Metabolism means sum total of various biochemical actions happens within the cell. That is called as metabolism. There are two types of metabolism. It always happens within the cell. So metabolism means, let me give you the definition once again: sum total of various biochemical reactions occurring within the cell. That is called as metabolism. There are two types in metabolism: anabolism and catabolism. We can call it as anabolic reactions and catabolic reactions. Small molecules in anabolic reactions, small molecules are combined together and form the larger molecules, and there is a accumulation of a lot of energy over there. So here we can say that the photosynthesis is a very good example of anabolism. Catabolism means the one larger molecule is a breakdown into smaller molecules. Digestive process is a very good example of the catabolic reactions. Children, again one more thing within the metabolism, that is amphibolic. Amphibolic reaction means it is nothing but, here you could observe that the anabolism or anabolic reactions as well as catabolism together. So which one is that? A very good example of the amphibolic reaction means cellular respiration is a very good example of amphibolic. Cellular respiration is a very good example of amphibolic reaction. Now we are moving on to that cellular organization. Cellular organization means we are talking about the cell. What are the organs which are present within the cell? They are called as cellular organizational structure. So every living organisms, you could see that the cellular organization. So anything is other than a cell is incapable of living. So they are not at all included in the living things. So now we can see that the cell structure, but you can see that the differences in the plant cell and animal cell. Plant cell, you can see the cell wall, but animal cell, they don't have the cell wall. Plant cells, you can see the chloroplast, but animal cells, they don't have the chloroplast, but they have the definite cell structure. So that is the one helpful to carry out different activities within the body. And that is the one helpful for releasing the energy, gives energy. That is the thing helpful for the survival of the living organisms. So if you ask me, what about virus? They are the connecting link in between the living thing and non-living thing. Why? Because they don't have a definite cellular structure. That's what they are considered as non-living thing. But once they enter into the body of the living things, they started to dominate that the cell structure of the host cells. So it is the connecting link in between the living thing as well as non-living thing. Now we are moving on to the consciousness. There are two factors involved into that consciousness. Number one, stimuli and response. Stimuli means if there is any changes or awareness about the surroundings, that is called as stimuli. According to that, the changes or awareness of surroundings, if you started to react, that is called as a response. So all the living organisms have these characteristics. Apart from that, as long as the human being is that in the topmost position among the animals, they have self-consciousness also, that you cannot find that self-consciousness in other living organisms. So if you ask me, what are that the characteristics basically show that they are living things means, according to my point of view, metabolism, cellular organization, and consciousness. These three surely shows that the organisms or things belongs to the category of living things. So the next session we are going to see one more interesting topic. Until then, bye.